I saw my dead husband waiting at a red light 3 years after I buried him.
You should have stopped looking, Claire. Now your sister pays the price.
The first time I saw my dead husband, he was sitting behind the wheel of a black sedan at a red light in downtown Chicago. He turned his face toward me. Then he smiled. 3 years earlier, I had identified his body in the county morgue. Hello, my name is Claire Bennett, and until that rainy Thursday night, I believed the worst thing my husband had ever done was die and leave me alone. I was wrong. Daniel had done something much worse. He had made me mourn a man who was still alive. Paro-e, Tichi-medabu Ho Skuldiashiandiadi. The rain had started just after 6, turning the streets into long mirrors of red brake lights and glowing store signs. I had stayed late at my office to finish a report for the Holloway Foundation, the nonprofit where I worked as a financial compliance investigator. That title sounds more exciting than the job usually was. Most days, I followed receipts, checked grant records, and asked why someone had spent $12,000 on community outreach at a private golf club. I was good at finding money people wanted hidden. Daniel used to tease me about it. You could find a missing dollar in a burning building, he would say. That night, traffic stopped at the intersection of Wabash and Lake. I stood beneath the narrow cover of a closed coffee shop, waiting for the walk signal. Across the street, a black sedan rolled to a stop. The rear window was dark, but the driver's side was clear. I looked at the man behind the wheel and forgot how to breathe. Daniel. The same dark hair, cut short around his ears. The same straight nose. The same habit of rubbing his thumb over the side of his wedding finger when he was nervous. He was older. Thinner. There was a pale scar near his jaw that had not been there before. But it was him. I stepped off the curb before the walk signal changed. A horn screamed. A delivery van missed me by inches, spraying dirty water across my coat. The man in the sedan turned. Our eyes met. His face went white. Then, slowly, he smiled. Not warmly, not with surprise. It was the small, cold smile of a man who had just realized that a secret had escaped its cage. The light changed. The sedan shot forward. I ran after it, shouting Daniel's name, but the car disappeared between buses and taxis. For several seconds, I stood in the middle of the road while strangers cursed at me. When I reached the sidewalk, my hands were shaking so badly that I dropped my phone twice. I called the police. The dispatcher asked if I was in immediate danger. My husband is alive. I said. There was a pause. Ma'am, is your husband missing? No, he's dead. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear how insane I sounded. 3 years earlier, Daniel had supposedly died when his car went through a guardrail near Lake Geneva. The vehicle burned before emergency crews arrived. The body had been badly damaged, but his wedding ring, wallet, and dental records confirmed his identity. I had seen what remained of him. I had buried him. I had stood beside his grave while his younger brother, Marcus, held an umbrella over my head and told me that Daniel would always watch over me. Now Daniel had watched me from a car, and he had driven away. The police sent an officer named Torres. She was kind, which somehow made the situation more humiliating. Grief can do strange things, she said carefully. I know what I saw. Did you get the license plate? Only 3 characters had stayed in my mind: K, 7, and 4. Officer Torres searched the traffic system, but no clear match appeared. She gave me a card and suggested I call someone I trusted. There was only one person I could call, my sister, Lena. She arrived 20 minutes later, wearing pajama pants under a long winter coat. She did not tell me I was confused. She did not mention grief. She looked at my face and asked, "What did he do when he saw you?" He smiled. Lena's expression changed. Then we find out why. That was the moment my grief ended. My investigation began. Party WO, Tichi first IE. The next morning, I opened the box I had not touched since Daniel's funeral. It contained his wallet, watch, keys, wedding ring, and the few personal objects recovered from the crash. The ring was blackened by fire. His watch had stopped at 11:47 p.m. I spread everything across my kitchen table. Lena made coffee and watched me work. "What are you looking for?" she asked. "A mistake." I began with the crash report. Daniel had told me he was driving to Milwaukee to meet a construction client. His car left the road at 11:40 p.m. There were no witnesses. The fuel tank ruptured, and the vehicle burned. The medical examiner had used dental records because visual identification was possible. I stared at that line. Who provided the dental records? Lena leaned closer. The report named Westbridge Dental Associates. Daniel had never gone there. His dentist was a woman named Dr. Patel, whose office was 6 blocks from our home. I called Westbridge. The receptionist searched Daniel's name and said he had been a patient for 2s before his death. That made no sense. I requested copies as his surviving spouse. She told me the old files had been archived and would take time to retrieve. Then I searched Daniel's email backups. After his death, I had saved everything, but had never examined it closely. Grief had made each message feel like a live wire. Now I searched for Westbridge. Nothing. I searched for Milwaukee. One appointment appeared on the night of his death, but it was not with a client. It said only, Radarome, 10:30. Lena read it over my shoulder. A bar, maybe. We searched the name. Dozens of places appeared, but one had closed 3 years earlier, the Red Room Lounge, a private club inside the Bellwether Hotel. The Bellwether stood less than 2 blocks from where I had seen Daniel. My phone rang. Westbridge Dental was calling back. The receptionist sounded nervous. She said there had been an error. Daniel Bennett had never been a patient there. You just told me he was. I was mistaken. Then whose dental records identified the body? She hung up. 10 minutes later, someone knocked on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw Marcus, Daniel's brother. I had not called him. I had not told him what I saw. When I opened the door, he gave me the same concerned expression he had worn at the funeral. Claire, are you all right? Why wouldn't I be? A police officer contacted me. She said you thought you saw Daniel. Officer Torres had never asked for his number. I moved into the hallway and closed the door behind me. Marcus glanced at the lock. You know how grief can return around anniversaries. The anniversary is 5 months away. His eyes hardened for half a second. Who told you about Westbridge Dental? I asked. He stepped back. That was my answer. Claire, let this go. Because my brother is dead. Then why are you afraid I'll find him? Marcus grabbed my wrist. His voice dropped to a whisper. You have a good life now. Keep it, I pulled free. He walked toward the elevator, then turned. Daniel hurt people before he died. You don't want to know how many. The elevator doors closed. Lena opened my apartment door behind me. She had recorded the entire conversation on her phone. He knows, she said. Yes? What do we do? I looked down at the red marks on my wrist. Why make him think I'm scared? Hafo alo do, the manai. That afternoon, I called Marcus and apologized. I told him I had been tired and confused. I said seeing a stranger who resembled Daniel had opened an old wound. I promised to speak with my therapist and let the matter go. Marcus sounded relieved. People become careless when they believe you have surrendered. For the next week, I went to work, came home, and kept my curtains open. I let anyone watching see me cook dinner, watch television, and go to bed early. What they could not see was Lena entering through the service stairwell each night. Together, we rebuilt the last year of Daniel's life. 6 months before his supposed death, he had purchased a life insurance policy worth $4 million. I had received the money after the crash, but most of it remained untouched in a protected account. At the time, the policy had seemed like an act of love. Now it looked like part of a plan. I checked Daniel's business records. He had worked as a risk consultant for construction companies, but several of his clients were shells with no real employees. Payments moved from those companies into charities, then disappeared. One charity appeared again and again. The Holloway Foundation. My employer. I felt the betrayal before I understood it. Daniel had encouraged me to apply there 4 years earlier. He had edited my resume, introduced me to a board member, and celebrated when I got the job. I had believed he supported my career. In reality, he had placed me inside the organization. But why? I searched archived grants and 12 payments approved under my employee credentials. Together, they totaled $8.6 million. I had never approved them. Every payment occurred late at night while I was supposedly logged in from my home computer. Daniel had used my identity. If the fraud had been discovered, I would have gone to prison. My phone buzzed. An unknown number had sent a photograph. It showed me standing at my kitchen window that morning. Below the image were 6 words, Stiop Digigi or Lenadius first T. I called my sister. No answer. I drove to her house so fast that I barely remembered the trip. Her front door was unlocked. A lamp had been knocked over in the living room. Her phone lay on the floor. Then I heard a sound from the basement. 3 slow knocks. I grabbed a fireplace poker and opened the door. Lena, 3 more knocks. I descended 1 step at a time. At the bottom, I found my sister tied to a chair. Silver tape covered her mouth. Blood ran from a cut above her eyebrow. I crossed the room, but she shook her head violently. Then I saw the wire beneath the chair. It ran to a red light fixed to the wall. The light was blinking. A phone on the floor began to ring. I answered on speaker. Daniel's voice filled the basement. Hello, Claire. My knees nearly failed. I had imagined hearing his voice again for 3 years. In those fantasies, he apologized for leaving. He told me death had been a mistake. The real Daniel sounded calm and amused. Auntie her, I said. If you touch the rope before the red light turns green, a device under the chair will discharge enough electricity to stop her heart. Wana was crying. What do you want? The insurance money. All 4 million. You will transfer it to an account I send you. Why? You already stole millions. That money belongs to other people. Criminals. He laughed softly. Powerful people. There is a difference. Whose body was in your car? The silence lasted several seconds. A man no one would miss. The red light continued blinking. My fear changed shape. It became anger. You framed me for fraud. I gave you a role. You were always so proud of being useful. I looked around the basement. The window near the ceiling was open slightly. A thin cable ran from the red light through the gap. The system was being controlled from outside. I told Daniel I would pay. Of course you will, he said. You always did mistake obedience for love. The call ended. I waited. The red light turned green. I cut Lena free and carried her upstairs. The police found no explosive or electrical device beneath the chair. It had been a bluff, but the threat was real. Detective Maya Torres, the officer who had met me downtown, arrived at the scene. I told her everything, including Marcus's strange visit. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something that chilled me. I never contacted Marcus. Someone inside the department had told him about my report. Daniel had help. Part voir. T. Boliguerjericho, a named Detective Torres, took the case quietly to a federal financial crimes unit. She warned me that we did not know whom we could trust. I gave her copies of everything Lena and I had found. In return, she gave me one detail from the old crash investigation. The dead man had a surgical screw in his left shoulder. Daniel had never injured his shoulder. The unidentified victim was likely between 40 and 50 years old. He had old fractures in 2 ribs and traces of an industrial solvent on his clothing. I searched missing person reports from the month of the crash. At 3 in the morning, I found him. His name was Thomas Reed. He had been 46, divorced, and employed as a night maintenance worker at Westbridge Dental Associates. He had disappeared 2 days before Daniel's crash. Thomas had broken his left shoulder in a workplace accident 6 years earlier. No one had connected the cases. I contacted his daughter, Emily. We met in a quiet diner outside the city. She was 27, with tired eyes and a careful voice. She brought a folder containing everything she knew about her father's disappearance. Thomas had called her the night before he vanished. He told her he had found files proving that Westbridge Dental was changing medical records for money. He planned to go to the police. He never made it. Emily showed me his last voicemail. If something happens to me, Thomas said, look for the man with the red light. In the background, I heard a faint clicking sound. Daniel had owned a red glass desk lamp. He switched it on whenever he worked late. It cast a deep red circle across the wall of his home office. I had once thought it made the room look warm. Now I understood what Thomas had seen. Daniel. Emily covered her mouth when I showed her his photograph. That's him, she whispered. Dad sent me a picture before he disappeared. The photograph was blurry, but it showed Daniel entering Westbridge Dental through a rear door. We finally knew who had died in the car, but knowing was not enough. We needed proof that Daniel was alive and evidence connecting him to Thomas's murder. 2 days later, Daniel sent the transfer instructions. I was ordered to move the insurance money through 3 accounts and bring the final access device to the abandoned Bellwether Hotel at midnight. Detective Torres wanted to replace me with an undercover agent. I refused. Daniel had studied me for 12 years. He would recognize a trap. So we built one he would believe. I transferred the money into the first account, but federal agents placed a hold that would delay final release for 6 hours. The access device I carried looked real, but it transmitted audio and location data. Before I left, Lena hugged me. If you see a red light, she said, don't trust it. At 11:58 p.m., I entered the Bellwether through a side door. The hotel had been empty for years. Dust covered the marble floor. Plastic sheets hung from the ceiling, moving like pale ghosts whenever cold air passed through the lobby. A row of small red lights marked a path toward the ballroom. One light, then another, then another. I followed them. The ballroom doors stood open. Inside, a single chair waited beneath an old chandelier. Daniel stepped from the darkness. For one terrible second, I saw the man I had loved. He wore the gray coat I had given him on our 10th anniversary. His hair had more silver in it, but his eyes were unchanged. I remembered Sunday mornings, burnt pancakes, his hand resting on my back while we slept. Then I remembered Thomas Reed burning inside a car. I remembered Lena tied to a chair. You look well, Daniel said. You look dead. He smiled. Did you bring it? I held up the access device. First, tell me why. Does it matter? It mattered when I buried you. He walked closer. Daniel explained it with the pride of a man describing a successful business. He and Marcus had been laundering money for contractors, politicians, and private investors. Westbridge changed dental records. Corrupt officials altered reports. Thomas discovered the scheme, so Daniel used his body to create a new identity for himself. My position at Holloway gave them a clean path for stolen funds. You chose me because of my job. At first. That answer hurt more than I expected. Did you ever love me? He looked almost offended. I gave you 12 good years. You gave me 12 years of evidence. His smile disappeared. Marcus entered behind me and locked the ballroom doors. He held a gun. Give him the device, Marcus said. I looked at Daniel. You plan to kill me after the transfer. Daniel sighed. You were never supposed to see me at that light. Why were you there? Meeting someone who became unreliable. Like Thomas. His eyes narrowed. Give me the device. I placed it on the chair. Daniel picked it up and entered a code. A tiny green light appeared. He relaxed. That was when I knew we had him. He had confirmed control of the account on camera and confessed in front of 2 witnesses. But the ballroom remained silent. No agents rushed in. Daniel noticed my glance toward the door. He laughed. Did you think Detective Torres would save you? Marcus opened a side door. Detective Torres walked into the ballroom. My heart stopped. She was carrying her badge in one hand and a pistol in the other. Daniel smiled at me. Everyone has a price, Claire. For one moment, I believed him. Then Torres turned and shot Marcus in the leg. The gun fell from his hand. Federal agents crashed through the ballroom doors. Daniel grabbed me around the throat and pulled a knife from his coat. He dragged me backward toward the old stage while agents surrounded us. Put it down, Torres shouted. Daniel pressed the blade against my neck. Tell them to move. I could feel his breath beside my ear. Once, that closeness had made me feel safe. Now it made me feel nothing. I looked at the red emergency light above the stage door. It was glowing steadily. And I remembered Lena's warning. If you see a red light, don't trust it. The real exit was on the opposite side. Daniel was backing toward a door that led to hotel's unfinished service shaft. I did not warn him. Instead, I whispered, "You should have stayed dead." Then I drove my heel down onto his foot and threw my weight forward. Daniel lost his balance. He reached for the red-lit door and pulled it open. There was no floor behind it. He caught the frame with one hand. I fell beside the edge, but Detective Torres grabbed my arm. Daniel hung above the dark shaft. "Claire," he shouted. For the first time that night, he looked afraid. "Help me." I stared at the man I had married, the man I had buried, and the man who had murdered a stranger so he could steal a new life. Part of me wanted to watch his fingers slip, but revenge is not the same as justice. And I refused to become him. I reached down. Daniel smiled with relief. Then I pulled the access device from his coat, instead of taking his hand. Agents grabbed him a second before his grip failed. They dragged him onto placed him in handcuffs. "This isn't over," he said. I knelt near him. "For you, it is." Rod IGHT Taras Girian. The arrests continued for 6 weeks. Marcus survived his wound and accepted a plea agreement. He gave investigators names, account numbers, and recordings. 2 police officials, a county records clerk, 3 executives, and the owner of Westbridge Dental were charged. The Holloway Foundation dismissed its entire board. My name was cleared. Daniel was charged with murder, kidnapping, fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and insurance fraud. The evidence from the bellwether was devastating, but the most important witness was Emily Reed. In court, she told the jury about her father. Thomas had not been a man no one would miss. He had been a father who called every Sunday. He fixed radios, hated tomatoes, and kept every birthday card his daughter had ever given him. The jury found Daniel guilty on every major charge. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But my revenge did not end in the courtroom. The $4 million from the insurance policy could not legally remain mine. After the company recovered its payment, I sold the apartment Daniel and I had owned together and used my share to establish Thomas Reed Justice Fund. It provides legal and financial support to families of missing adults whose cases have been ignored. Emily runs it with me. Lena designed our logo. It is a red traffic light changing to green. A year after Daniel's conviction, I visited him once. The prison guard led him into a room divided by thick glass. Daniel picked up the telephone and studied me. "You look different," he said. "I am. Why did you come?" I placed a newspaper against the glass. The front page showed Emily and me opening the fund's first office. Daniel read the headline. His face tightened. "You used my money?" "No," I said. "I used my life. The one you failed to destroy." He leaned closer. "You still think about me?" "I think about Thomas." "You loved me?" "I loved the man you pretended to be." For the first time, Daniel had no clever answer. I put down the phone. He tapped the glass and called my name, but I walked away. Outside the prison, evening traffic moved slowly along the highway. I stopped at an intersection as the light changed from yellow to red. For years, red lights had taken me back to that rainy street. The impossible face behind the wheel, the smile, and the terror that followed. This time, I did not look at the cars beside me. I looked straight ahead. The light turned green, and I drove into a life where the dead man could never follow me again. He had used a red light to rise from the dead. But when it finally turned green, I was the one who came back to life.